Hello, hello, hello.
Greetings.
Hello.
Greetings, everyone. Dr. Smallwood, I just realized something. You and I are not friends. I did a friend request and you never accepted my friend request. So I sent you the link. I sent you the link to the video via Messenger.
Okay.
Okay.
So you just called me out.
I
Right.
did. That's what I did. Yeah. Yeah.
Live.
Yeah, I did. I did. I called you out live. Yeah. That's right.
But sometimes, those friend requests come in and you don't always see them. I'm just going to be honest about that part.
Thanks for your help, sis. I appreciate it.
Because I know, oh, we are on a little early.
Oh,
And it's so funny. I love that video that you made because every
you
time I
did.
see it, I'm just like, look at all the wonderful people we have had come through here. This
Exactly.
has been
Awesome.
just a blessing.
Exactly. And did we miss anybody? Does
Yeah,
it
we
look
got some
like we
more.
missed?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
got way more
we
than that.
probably have some more. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you snuck that in on me. I would have got you some more stuff. But I want to say hello to Reverend Winter and then Dr. Melva joining us from North Carolina. Hey, Melva.
Hey,
And
Dr.
Olivia. I see y'all as the people join us in. And we'll get started in just a minute. Let's see who's over on YouTube.
Melva. All right. Let me see. Let me see who I see on YouTube. So far, we don't have. I don't see anybody on YouTube. I have Winter, Melva, Olivia. Redora Stewart. She's here. She's joining us on Facebook.
And we waving up to DC. All right, Dora. Looking forward to talking to
Absolutely.
her at the end of the month.
Uh-huh. Yes, we certainly are. We got a really good lineup. Well, we always do, but
Yeah.
each
Kind
year
of
it's
amazing.
and I know, and people just keep saying yes, you know. And so we really appreciate it, and we're getting to really expose our community to womanism and womanist method and womanist ethics and womanist preaching and womanist scholarship and all of that. So
Yeah.
I'm thrilled about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm
It is.
super duper excited tonight to introduce to some, as they say, introduce to some and present to others, none other than the Reverend Dr. Teresa L. Smallwood. So, yay!
Welcome, welcome. Thank you for your yes, Dr. Smallwood.
You don't know how honored I feel.
Aw,
It's so
that is
sweet.
wonderful. When we ask, we just never know what people's schedule is going to be like and who's
Mhm.
going to um, uh, find the time or have the time to say yes. So we know how busy you are, Dr. Smallwood, and we just really appreciate you saying yes and being one of our womanist scholars.
For
So let's
2021.
for 2021. So welcome everybody. Come on in and do us a favor. Please like and share this broadcast because I guarantee you there are some people in your profile, in your community, that are going to want to watch this live, that are going to want to see this conversation and hear this conversation. So please like and share this broadcast. We really would appreciate it. So let's get going. Reverend Camila, do you want to kick off the first question or do you want me to go ahead and do that? Oh, before we get going, please, if you have questions as we go along, please go ahead and just post them in the chat and we'll get to them and we will relay them to Dr. Smallwood at a particular point in our conversation. So if something, and as soon as you think of a question, write it down. Because if you're like me and Reverend Camila, you might not remember it as time goes on. So go,
It'll be a
go
second
ahead
thought.
and do that. It'll be gone, right? So let's go ahead and get started. So, Dr. Smallwood, tell us about you. Who are you? Now, when we ask that question, we mean it in the typical sense of who are you, but we also mean it in like this fundamental core sense of you of who you are. So, talk to us.
Surely. And thank you again for the invite. I'm a country girl. I grew up in rural agrarian northeastern North Carolina, in a little town called Windsor, North Carolina. And I assessed pretty quickly that the best way out of there was through education. So I went on from my high school in Bertie County to UNC Chapel Hill, got an undergraduate degree there, and then went on to get a law degree. And from there, I worked for several years until I really tried to duck the call to ministry. But that ducking was kind of like Job and also Jonah. And eventually, after getting myself spilled out onto the side of the road, it was real clear that I needed to prepare myself for a different walk. And so I began the journey of preparing myself through Howard Divinity School, and on from there to Chicago Theological Seminary, and received a PhD degree in 2017, and took the first job with Vanderbilt, where I am presently, as a postdoctoral fellow and the associate director of public theology and racial justice. At my core, I am a lover of God, one who found my faith early in life. I recall being on the mourner's bench. Grew up in the Baptist faith, and as they say, you know, you're Baptist born, Baptist bred, and when you die, you'll be Baptist dead. However, I can tell you that it was also growing up in the Bible Belt. And I say often, and to almost every audience, that in my growing up and discovering myself, I found myself to be beaten quite often by that belt and the Bible itself as well. And so I ventured off from the Baptist faith into some other denominational experiences, some non-denominational experiences, even some African cosmologies that helped me ground myself in a much more beatific reality of myself. And so there's a composite here that claims the imprimatur of God and claims the image of God. And I am one who is grounded sufficiently in the belief and the notion that I know who I am and whose I am. And there's no doubt in my mind.
Wow. I know who I am and whose I am, and there is no doubt in my mind. That is that'll preach right there.
Right. Yeah.
Amen. Amen.
But it's so I just love even just you starting off because I identify so much with your story because I have this a lot. We share a lot of the same journey with the law thing and being thrown out like Job. I just loved hearing you talking about that.
Well, I can tell you that, and I mean, my experience is both literal and figurative, but I can really honestly say that this was a journey toward God. You know, I am like Job in the sense that I am thankful for the way God brought me.
Mm.
Not everybody is appreciative of the struggles, but the struggles help to make me. I wear all of my stripes like, you know, a army sergeant would, or an army captain would. So I've earned every bit of it. And I'm very careful to understand and know that, you know, God is a hard taskmaster, but God is a loving God. And when you can find the balance in that place in your own spirituality and the maturity of your growth, the capacity for you to really appreciate. I mean, Jesus appreciated the struggle just as much as all of the people making myrations, as my grandmother would say, over him as the king. This notion that, you know, even in the process of saying something like, can't you find another way to do this?
Yeah.
And then coming to an understanding that there is no other way. There is no other way. But in the process of saying yes, you get a clear glimpse of what beauty really is. And those ashes that you had because you got burned so many times, that people you believed in and people you thought were great. You know, I thought the preachers that I grew up with were great until my own orientation came into conflict with the thing they were saying. And once that happened, then I got burned.
Yeah.
But God has shown me through the anointing what it means to have an exchange those beauty for ashes.
Wow. Well, that brings us, as you were talking about getting burned, it really brings us to this next question regarding your dissertation. Your
Mhm.
dissertation is titled "The Leprosy Effect, semicolon, a queer womanist pastoral care model." So the first part of this question is, do you self-identify as a queer womanist? If so, how did you come to settle on that designation?
It was Pamela Lights's book that really convinced me that I could call myself queer. Because I struggled with that, as I struggled with being out as a lesbian,
Mhm.
being in a posture where I was clearly and unabashedly a Christian and someone who can handle the word and preach the word and be in the pulpit and do the things that clerical people do. The conflicts internally, because of the messages you've already had input,
Mhm.
cause you a lot of struggle. But being able to understand what it means to queer something,
Yeah.
what it means to wrestle, in the nighttime, in your night season, as the old folks would say, to a place where not only are you sure, but you can do what Paul talked about, which is to be able to give people an articulation of the hope that lies within you. And it was at that place where I understand that our lives matter too, and that is really the message of her book. But she does so eloquently and through a theoretical methodology that is very important to the work we do as womanists, and most particularly that last chapter, as she helps to just break down the sort of what I call the anthropological piece of things, how you get out there in the world and be. So Paul Tillich talked about having the courage to be, but she talked about how to walk it,
Hmm.
and she walked it, in response to the death of uh, I believe it was Michael Brown,
Mm-hmm.
but there were also other pieces that she handled well. Now, the term queer has been treated as a sort of clearinghouse word for people who fall within that long, panoply of alphabets.
Yeah.
They've gone from LGBT to LGBTQ to LGBTQIA plus, and so people have sort of placed that all in a clearinghouse of queer. What it says to me, however, is that not only am I identifying from an interlocutory sort of what you might call intersectional view, not only am I identifying with the queer community, but I'm also identifying with the capacity to utilize my craft as an academic to queer the things that we have previously taken for granted. So in the Black church, for instance, there is a real connection to biblical literalism,
Mhm.
and the sort of legalism that we operate in causes us to miss meaning often. Something simple as calling Adam Adam. If you break that thing down to its lowest common denominator, you realize the word in the Hebrew, or really in the Greek, I think, in the Septuagint, would have been Adama.
Yeah.
Over time, that term has been shortened to a personal noun, somebody's name.
Mhm.
But no, the meaning was being.
Mhm.
And we've given it a gender relationship, when in fact the being was what we might call in today's language a hermaphrodite. Everything all in one.
Mhm.
And then God separates it. Well, when that comes out, that for me is a queering analysis. It helps us to understand that we might just be doing something bad when we talk about male and female in that context of creation, when in fact God came with a whole different prototype
Hmm.
and then showed us how to break it apart and how it can live separate, but at the same time be together. Now, that, in my mind, is very revolutionary, but it's also freeing. So, queering is a manner or a mechanism of liberation.
Mhm.
Queering gives us the capacity to see things in a different light. And that's how I latched onto it. And so when I say a queer womanist, then that brings me into the realm of methodologies and frameworks that help me fashion the importance of my own story. So yes, I grew out of a program that was interdisciplinary. That means that I didn't just come out as an ethicist or a theologian. My concentration was theology, ethics, and the human
Human
sciences.
sciences.
The
Yes, I
particular
saw that.
cognate that I chose was psychology, but there
Mm-hmm.
are others that I pull from, like sociology or
Mm-hmm.
economics or law. As law is my background. But the bottom line is that womanism gives me the capacity, through and by the founders who understood what the meaning of womanist was for Alice Walker in her original definition, but then how it could be overlaid in the very specific things they were learning in their experiences at Union Theological Seminary. And so what they did was create this methodology, this framework by which we could then begin to legitimize in some ways, but really just authenticate in other ways, the capacity for women, and particularly Black women, to have not just a voice in academia, but a presence, a
Mm.
ministry presence, and the kind of presence that helps elevate us to the place where Jarena Lee should have been before they posthumously made her
Yeah.
a saint or
Yeah.
whatever it was that the AMEs did 200 years after her death.
Yeah.
She deserved to have been that then. And so womanism is that framework in academia that says our experiences, and you know this for yourselves, you both have uh, seminal degrees and you have PhDs and DMins. So you know that if you were left to study just
Yeah.
20th century theology, you would have no Black women.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
if somebody were really trying to stretch it, they would put Mercer Odeoye in there out of Africa. But
Mm-hmm.
there would not have been any Black female that would have fallen into that category. Now there is.
Yeah.
In fact, if we let down this really humongous fate that we have, and we don't hold on to it, then we won't canonize Katie Cannon or
Mhm.
Jacqueline Grant or um, even our sister in the wilderness,
Yeah.
uh,
Dolores Williams.
as
Dolores
it
Yes.
Williams.
relates to our context and where we come.
I see a question down here that I want to give to you that is in line with what you're saying. So this question comes actually from one of our ministry partners at the gathering, Olivia Gray. She says, "So are you saying that queering is a resistance to the norm?"
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
It is a disruptive ethic.
a disruptive ethic. Let me write that
That's
down.
something I gathered from a feminist, a Black feminist, in fact, Tracy West.
Tracy West.
But it's nevertheless a very important dynamic that we as women must embrace. This notion that the narrative that has been put out there has a meta narrative, and the narrative that is out there must be countered with
Yes.
truth.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into, so you are a public theologian
Yeah,
in ethics. So we know there's a meta narrative going on, but what does it mean as you're querying and dealing with this meta narrative to be a public theologian?
hmm Well, let me say this at the outset, that I believe all theology is public theology.
Uh,
If
say
it
more.
is
Say more
not,
about that. Yeah. All
Yeah.
theology
so
is
if it is
public.
not, if we don't make what we claim to be something that is known, we don't share what we believe, we don't give that articulation of hope, then nobody gets to know the beauty of what it is we have committed ourselves to. But that's fundamental, right? There are some different layers, and one layer is about how we can blend our voices in a pluralistic society with other voices of faith. So, can a Christian exist, homogeneously with a Muslim or a Baha'i or a Buddhist? Is there anything that brings us to a place of commonality? And I always invoke my dear friend in theopoetics, Audre Lorde, when Audrey says, "Listen, unity doesn't mean unanimity.
Mhm.
Her whole point being that we don't have to be just alike in order to be together.
Yeah.
We can be in harmony, sing a song together. You sing your part in a cappella and alto, and I'll sing mine in soprano, but we can all blend it. This is the idea that I have about public theology, is that, I really don't know God as deeply as I could unless I'm willing to open myself to the way you know God.
Mm,
I've come to an understanding about God that is like this mosaic I claim myself to be. A mosaic brings a little piece of red glass, a little piece of blue, a little piece of white glass, a little piece of yellow, brings it together and makes a beautiful picture. Well, what is my image of God if I have left out the green, or I've left
mm,
out the black, right? If I've left out some of the colors, some of the ways in which God has colored God's self, some of the ways in which those volumes that Jesus spoke about that you know nothing of
mm,
can still speak to my understandings of who God is and how God operates in the world, particularly among God's creation. So for me, it is a way to not only blend my voice, but then to lend my voice
Mm.
to the work of justice, because justice becomes the very thing that ought to unite us all. There's not a communion, not a rationality that is of a faith tradition that does not have justice at its core.
that's right.
And you can't read the Christian Bible. You cannot read any of the Old Testament, I should say, prophets without coming away from that understanding. Justice shalt thou pursue. With that in mind, then, public theology must have a focus. Now, what I've been focused on for the last 4 years is racial justice, but it can also focus on social justice. It can focus on economic justice. And I hope that at some point we'll make that turn, because reparations is big on my list of things to get done,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Get it done.
But the idea of there being a witness to the thing I claim for my soul, the
Mm,
thing that I believe is going to carry me into that eschatological place of heaven, that place where I can understand and know that the lion and the lamb can lay down together. That place uh, really is what moves public theology. And then public theology, with it being the lens through which we see the world, ushers in the justice that we all deserve and should desire.
oh my God.
That's beautiful.
Whew, I'm just mesmerized.
Right. I'm
I'm
just.
just sitting on the edge of my seat, like, keep talking, keep talking. Oh my God.
Well, I know you said
Yes.
you've been focused on racial justice, but I know you're also in the process of co-editing a new book. Am I right?
Yes,
A new book with Dr. Towns.
yes.
You want to tell us a little bit about that project?
I'd love to. In fact, I need to also raise up my dear friend, Dr. Christoph D. Ringer, whose idea it was for us to come together on this volume. It's an edited volume. We've got about 30 contributors. I can't name them all off the top of my
Okay.
head, but I can tell you that one person is Tamara Lomax.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we
Wow.
got Reverend
Jezebel,
Tracy
Jezebel
Blackman.
Unhinged.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Reverend
yeah.
Tracy Blackman will be
Oh wow.
contributing. Reverend Sekou will be contributing.
Oh, good.
Um, there are probably, as I said, about 30 folk who will be giving us about a 5,000 word essay.
Mm,
Wow.
And we're really excited about the fact that, 3 words and a hashtag, Black Lives Matter, has really grown to a sort of meteoric rise. And you can say what you will about those words. My essay is going to be about how I can connect those words to movement mantras all through the time that we've been in America. You
Mm.
know, uh, I'm going to equate Black Lives Matter and its functionality to "I am a man," to "say it
hmm
loud, I'm black and I'm proud," to all of those words, all of those phrases that we've had that kept us in the vein of moving along. But I'm going to separate out the fact that, we have focused a great deal on body politics. And I want us to
Mm.
think about life politics, because they said
mm,
lives matter. And so what is the
Mm,
life? What is the life of Blacks? Have we enjoyed the life that has been dispensed to us? Or have we lived below our means? And when somebody makes that declaration and it rises off of their lips and it's spoken into the air and it gathers the kind of really just, you must say, fervor that
mm,
those three words have gathered, which over the years have catapulted us into a place where now we're looking at a George Floyd new movement in criminal reform, criminal justice reform. We've got to capitalize on what that means in terms of an incarnational meaning. The body now has spoken. It's not just the body is worthy, but the words come alive
mm,
when we think in terms of the life
mm,
of Blacks. You know, Judith Butler talked a lot about what is a grievable life,
mm,
what is an ungrievable life. And she defines an ungrievable life as a life that was never worth living,
mm,
a life that never had any chance. It's the same concept that Ibram X. Kendi is talking about when he calls people stamped from the
yeah,
beginning.
yeah.
Well, yeah, we might be stamped and maybe we've been ungrievable. But the reality is that God grieves when God's Black children are slain. And the blood speaks to God,
Mm,
even if
my
you are
God.
denying having done the slaying.
Mm,
Mm.
mm, mm. Goodness gracious alive.
Mm.
I know it's,
Ooh,
uh, I know.
even if you are denying.
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah. So I have a question that's not on here. I know Kiara Haynes, who is a student at Vanderbilt, she's on here. She just said, "My God,"
My God.
and I'm with you, Kiara.
Yes, we
Um,
are.
so as you were talking, Dr. Smallwood, I began thinking about something that our vice president said last week or a couple of weeks ago,
Mm.
related to racism in America, that America is not a racist nation. As a queer womanist, what kind of a response do you have for that?
You know, politics is a strange bedfellow.
Mm.
Mm,
And when you climb in bed with politics, you perform some acts that perhaps you would not have had you not joined that particular bed.
well, now.
Yes.
Now, for me, it's not any unclarity about the racism in America. The unclarity could be that we don't want to name everyone in America as racist. Well, that's a very separate thing.
Right.
And we are a complex people, no doubt, but we're capable of that kind of complexity when it comes to analyses. And so, if that's what you mean, that should be what you say.
Yeah.
You can't just lump everything together and say, oh, it's not.
Right.
Because if Tim Scott was making a serious point, then the sky is yellow. And we have to come to the conclusion that the sky is still blue. It's not yellow. And so we know what would promote a brother like that to say it. But I can't understand that coming off the lips of my sorrow. And
Yeah.
what I can say is this: when I think about people like Eliza Woods, and
Mhm.
Eliza Woods, I need to let you know, she's my griot. She's my spiritual griot. She's the woman who died in Tennessee as a result of having been slain because she was accused of poisoning the woman she worked for as a
Mm,
domestic. And Eliza Woods did not kill anyone. But because white people accused her, and because she had rat poisoning in her house, which, you know, if she was a domestic, she probably had some rats.
exactly.
So that was
Wow. Wow.
legitimized. Nonetheless, she got accused, she got arrested and put in jail in a white mob, similar to the mob we saw in January at the
Mhm.
Capitol. White mob grabbed her out of the jail, carried her to a poplar tree, hung her there, stripped her of her clothes, and then proceeded to let her die and wiggle. And once she was
Mm,
dead, then they riddled her body. with a whole lot of bullets.
Mm.
Now, 3 years later, the weight of the truth on Mr. Wooten, the husband of the woman who died, was too heavy, and he then went on and agreed that he was the one who poisoned his wife. Of course, Eliza by now was dead 3 years. But what she teaches me, and the reason I raise her in this, is because what we're seeing really in this present real time is an uptick of an ideology that never died.
Mm.
We have had in the person of our previous president a desire to not just do dog whistle politics, but now he's let the dogs out. He's answered the call of the rappers who let the dogs out. I let the dogs out. And more particularly, what he's done is help the dogs to now have their own story. And so you are seeing this uptick where people are no longer afraid. They really don't care what you think about racism or, their politics. They are seeing, and I heard, I believe it was Brittany Cooper say they're hearing the death rattle of their own
Yeah.
politicism.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is what they are seeing and what we are seeing when 300 or plus legislative bodies are trying to dial back voter registration or dial back suppression on the ability to vote. We're seeing this ideology take its charge. And so you can't look at that and not see racism. And if it's the majority acting, then that means the nation is racist.
Yeah.
But what it also means is that there is a counter narrative.
Mm.
And that counter narrative is what we are summoning to the floor. We are summoning through moral work that Barbara is doing, through the work of the SDPC and Iva Carruthers, through the work of the Children's Defense Fund, through the work of the Woman's Gathering in your church. We are summoning people to the forefront to be public theological thinkers and critical thinkers who can dial back this stuff and have something to say in response to people who, as a Southern Baptist, would say that critical race theory has no place in our analyses. We have to be positioned to speak against these derisions, because what we are really seeing unfold is what the Bible speaks about. The devil is most particularly crafty when the devil can get away with acting as an angel of light. Because there was absolutely no reason why we would see people carrying a Bible on March the 6th, walking in lockstep with people carrying nooses, unless they were reading the Bible through the lens of bad theology and operating in bad ethics. And so we're being called to the front row, front and center. Tell us what you believe and why you believe it. And then operate in a fashion where your theology is lived out every day. And you can call some folks on the carpet, and you can take down false prophets, and you can cause people who are speaking lies as though they were true to be corrected and to bring into a clearer focus the folks who are following them, because they're just like the pigs. At some point, they're going to be sent over the cliff.
Dr. Smallwood, I see you also as a theologian. Well, I'll say this, as a biblical scholar, because you weave, you said it when you talked about being, Baptist and growing up in the church, and it's, you have, to me it seems as though, a love and an understanding of scripture, of biblical stories, of texts that you live out, that is present in your public theology. How has the Bible, and how does it continue to guide you, and to inform your womanist praxis, really?
Particularly since you said you were whipped in that
With
Bible
it.
belt.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
And so my very life becomes the counter narrative because I took that Bible that I got beaten with and that belt. I strapped the belt around my body, just like all of our weaponry. I have my own shield of faith, my own helmet of salvation, right? And all of my accessories as a person who shows up on the battlefield understands clearly what my weaponry is. And not only do I understand my weaponry, but I yield, and I yield it well, like a ninja. So if I know that one of the weapons of my warfare is to be able to take that sword and slice up, that means that I have to know the Bible
Yeah.
because I have to have studied to show myself approved,
Hmm.
that I can be a workman. And I'm therefore not ashamed when people say, oh, you're a lesbian? Yes. But more particularly, I'm a child of the Most High God. And what I've come to understand about my own understanding of the Bible is that it's not far fetched from what biblical scholars do. It's just that I am enhanced by the work that they've done so that I no longer have to stumble over whether or not slaves should obey their masters.
Hmm.
I've done the work,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I've done the work that helps me drill down to the lowest common denominator about that. I can tell you that when Paul says stuff like, women, don't you speak in church because that is the law, I can tell you that there's no provision in the Torah, no provision whatsoever in the Torah about women speaking. So what law is he talking about?
Come
I
on
can
now.
tell you because
Come
I've
on here.
studied it, right? And that is the difference between the capacity for us to bring womanism into the church and give it nowhere to go, or to bring it in and have it be dispensed the same way God dispenses God's spirit in a fashion that prepares people to mature themselves into a place where they understand and don't live below their means, but actually live within the confines of a God who has it all. This is for me the theology of sufficiency, right?
Mm.
To be able to live into that place where I'm not worried about anything. There's nothing that you can shake off of me. Everything's been sealed. And one of the things that I look to, Sebastian Kim is one public theologian I read. He's done a lot of work in Bible around public theology. And one of the stories that he focuses on is the story of Isaac and his son, and this whole idea of a sacrifice. You know, a lot of people have written about that. Lots of folks, including Jacques Derrida, have done a lot of musings about what that meaning is. But for me, it was not even a question about whether or not sacrificing Isaac was the thing that was to be obedient. It was simply like the three Hebrew boys. It was simply that he knew if he killed him, God could raise him back up. And that becomes for us that place. It's the same place that a lot of these kamikaze pilots or folk who strap on these bombs on themselves, they have this same kind of thing, right? This idea that you can't really do me any harm. Death has been conquered. And because of it, then I really am not afraid. And if you're not afraid, see, that's fear is what drives a whole lot of this ideology, the uptick that we've seen. But if you're really not afraid, God can use you mightily. And you come to understand that we are standing up against some very serious demonic principalities and rulers of darkness in very high places. And if that is the moment that we're living in, that, you know, just praying the prayers that we read in the Bible, or praying the stuff we've memorized, or, you know, repeating things that we've known forever, that doesn't kick up anything. But it's when you, in your night season, have learned your prayer language, and you can call up uh, the help that you need. Then you can meet your foe with the right stuff. And so I've learned how to kill folk with kindness.
Hmm. Wow.
I've
Now,
learned that the joy I have, the
well,
world
didn't
didn't
give it
give
to
it to
me.
me.
Can't take it away. Wow. So
Uh,
you've written quite a lot, and several interesting articles. There were a couple that really arrested my attention when I was looking at your CV. One is titled "The Bully Pulpit: Crossing the Line That Separates Church and State. Morality in the Age of Obama." Then there is this one, "Homophobia and Transphobia in the Black Community," a community town hall. First, how do you define the bully pulpit?
well, in that instance, I was really speaking of people who utilize the clerical pulpit to bully people. And it was a play on words.
Mm-hmm.
The bully pulpit has been, you know, in a journalistic concept, something that we say people take their, you know, they take their privilege to speak on something because they've got the audience, they've got, you know, the platform. And so the same occurs to me on some Sunday mornings in some churches, and I would say a whole lot more than we probably all want to admit, where people get bullied, they get beaten up. It actually, that particular article is sort of a riff of my dissertation,
Mm-hmm.
because when I talk about my own lived experience, I'm talking about being in a church, loving God, and constantly being told, because I'm learning what I'm oriented to, I'm learning what I like, what I love, what I desire, and at the same time being told I'm an abomination to the one
Right.
who created me, and being told that somehow or another I don't measure up, that not just my desires are an abomination, but my very being,
Yeah.
the ontological connection I have to other human beings, is rejected by God. And that is untenable for me. There's no clarity in that. How in the world could the blood of Jesus be sufficient and efficacious and not be able to cover anything you think might be sinful about me? If in fact you make that conclusion and you suggest that Jesus can't fix me, I can't be
Mm.
acceptable to God, then there's something wrong with the blood.
Mm.
So I've come to conclude that there's nothing wrong with the blood. And if I am sin sick, if there is something wrong, then Jesus came for me. And because Jesus came for me and I believe in him, there's no way that you can tell me I don't belong to him. I abide in him. And those are the things that I think people get bullied about a lot.
Yeah.
I've seen folk who I knew were homosexual
Yeah.
stand up and denounce homosexuality. And not just denounce it, but be rigorous about how they talked about folk who were in that life. And I came to understand that it really is an internalized slavery.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's an internalized hatred.
Yeah.
And that internalized hatred stems from the fact our ancestors were up against a lot. When we talk in terms of the politics of respectability, understand it was a cry for belonging. But what we've come to understand in the matrix of white supremacist ideology, they could not have dressed well enough.
Mm-hmm.
They could not have conducted themselves respectably enough to be accepted. If we don't have any other examples, the fact that we had a Black Wall Street, that my very dear friend who's written her own book and it's coming out this week, about 100 years of Black Wall Street,
Mm-hmm.
Reverend Dr. Geraldine S. Eulenberg. When we think in
Oh,
terms of what that means, right? this notion that black folks had commanded the same respect as Wall Street. In fact, Du Bois had come to visit them and had said, this is Black Wall Street.
Mm.
We'd accomplished so much without them
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
really and truly, they couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
They were so
Yeah.
jealous, they had to
Yeah.
burn it down.
Had to
My
burn it
point
down.
being that because of the politics of respectability, we've always tried to chase the lies that say we're hypersexual, that we're beast, that we're lazy, that we don't want to do, that we have no interest. And first of all, you cannot even lump one group of people into all those stereotypical categories. That's the first thing. But the second thing is they're all lies.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, then we have to be in a posture, right, where we are denouncing the capacity for anyone to define us but ourselves. That's why I love Audre Lorde. She's
Mm-hmm.
the one who taught me that if I didn't define myself for myself, I'd be crushed into other people's understandings of me and they would kill me.
Yeah. And
Paraphrasing, of course.
and so, how did you resist the bully pulpit, particularly as it relates to your sexuality, your gender identity? How did you resist that bully pulpit? Because that, that is a weight and it is a burden and it is a fear and it evokes shame and all kinds of stuff for people that I know and I love,
Mm-hmm,
right? Who are still struggling
mm-hmm,
to 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 own who they are. But these tapes,
mm-hmm.
right?
Keep
And
playing.
these sermons and these texts
Mm-hmm,
and their
mm-hmm,
family members are just clouding out,
mm-hmm,
drowning out their truth. So
mm-hmm,
how were you able to silence and resist and reject
mm-hmm.
the theology that comes or came from the bully pulpit?
My, that is a deep and didactic question, and I thank you for it. I came to understand the importance of, as I said before, dealing with the words. So I came across this word morphu, which is a
Yeah,
Hebrew word that basically helps us understand the connection we have with Jesus. It's like a baby in the womb. And when I really realized what it meant to have God in my body, to have the very same spirit that raised Jesus from the dead flowing through me, there was not a devil in hell that could tell me I didn't belong. From there, from the idea of that connection being like a baby in the womb, I knew that if I was willing to open myself to the maturation process of the Holy Spirit, whose job it is to lead us into all truth, that I could find the truth. And I found that truth in some words. You know, first of all, I come to this work the way Jesus came to the garden. I came to this work alone while the dew was still on the roses. And it took me some time to get to a place where I could say, but not my will, thy will be done. Because God was raising me up for the purpose of being a witness to
yeah,
people just like what you've described,
yeah,
to help them understand that the anointing rests on me, that God has literally said to a eunuch, I'll give you a place better than sons and daughters. And if a eunuch who doesn't engage in any kind of sexual activity will have a place better than sons and daughters, don't you think you will be all right? But more particularly, I came to really, really do some meditation work on Jesus's final words on the cross.
mm,
And I looked at that it is finished from various angles until the Holy Spirit helped me see what was finished. You know, Christ's work on the earth was not complete. There was still the ability to go down and to make his plea for the folk who were held captive in hell. There was still the need to take his glorified body up and back to God. All of that was work. But he says on the cross, it is finished. What is finished? The payment for sin is finished. So you cannot beat me over the head with I'm a sin sick person. You can't beat me over the head with any of that stuff. Paul said, look, who will deliver me from the body of this death? It's Jesus Christ. And that's my belief. And with that belief, I'm free. So when the people sang that song, I'm free, praise the Lord, I'm free, it has more meaning for me than perhaps it does for anyone else. Because I understand the liberatory nature of what Christ's finished work on the cross has done. And if that work is finished, then the church is off. Because all it wants to do is beat people over the head about being sinful, when what it should be doing is promoting the message of justice.
Yeah.
Mm. So what are your hopes for womanism? What are your hopes? Where do you see it progressing and moving?
Well, if I can ever get a book deal, part of what I was so very sufficiently blessed with in the Pamela Lightsey book was for the first time a Black woman, Black queer woman, had written on the topic.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that, Kelly Brown Douglas did us a good service with the Black church and sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And then there have been others. Roger Sneed did his piece, and several others who've had some things to say. But my ethnographic work is one that really exposes what that bully pulpit has been like for people.
Yeah.
One young man's pastor told him he needed to bolt the door to his sexuality. Well, I know Paul said that you should kill your flesh. But let me ask both of you, have you been anywhere lately without your flesh?
No.
Goes everywhere I go.
When I
Okay.
move, it moves.
Where I move, it moves. That's right. Just like that. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, I really hope that womanism will be this platform that helps to identify and clearly unshackle people's minds. It has done so already in the 20 plus years that it's existed. And I know that my good friend, Melanie C. Jones, is doing a tremendous job with the KDG Cannon Institute.
Yeah.
And I know that womanists all over the world, and particularly you two, are doing great work to help open it up, to the masses. But in academia, we have to continue to publish. We have to continue to write. We have to continue to tell our stories. Chimamanda Adichie Ngozi, I think it's Ngozi Adichie, wrote this, she actually did a TED Talk, but it was from a little small book that she wrote about the danger of a single story.
Love that TED Talk.
And I love it too. And I go back to it often because we so often just want to tell the story about someone that is neat and clean and shiny and beautiful and talk about their accolades and so forth. But honey, I have had some failures just like I've had some successes. And my failures can help people. Right? Just as much as my successes. And so I'm willing to tell the stories, tell the things. If somebody would have told me that Mother Mountain had a baby out of wedlock, maybe I wouldn't have had an abortion. Maybe I wouldn't have been so fearful about bringing a child into the world that I wouldn't have done that thing. But I'm not kicking myself for it. What I'm saying is tell the stories.
Tell the story.
Because only God can give life.
Yeah.
Why would we ever place such harm on folks? The bully pulpit has sat women down and did nothing to men when they got pregnant, right? The bully pulpit has caused mothers who knew that they were called by God to preach, Jarena Lee.
Yes.
Right? The bully pulpit has taught us that we must do what Paul said and don't let no women be talking to nobody and preaching to nobody and teaching no men. Well, that's just crazy. And we're at a place now where womanism gives us the platform to take that on, to interrogate the very text. I think it was Thurman's grandmother who said, don't read that part to me.
I don't want to hear nothing about Paul. I don't hear nothing Paul said. That's right.
It's that idea. And I hope that's what will be promoted.
Yeah. So I just have one more question, and then Camila, I'm gonna leave you the last one to you. So in thinking about Alice Walker's um, conversation about womanism and offering us her perspective on what it is, right? Do you that four-part definition? Do you see, or where do you see queerness in that definition? Because there are a lot of schools of thought around that, right? Even
Mhm,
among
mhm,
womanists.
mm. So queerness is in almost every part of it, because what she's doing is queering. When she talks about going to Canada, she's talking double entendre, right? She's talking about Sojourner Truth and Black Moses and the folk who carried our folks through the railroad, right? So that's queering. But if we want to talk about, homosexuality or LGBTQ folk, I think the strongest example of how that might be implied in her words is when she says women
Yeah,
who love
love
other
other
women,
women. That's
sexually
right.
or non-sexually.
Yeah,
And those are powerful words coming from a
exactly.
cisgender woman who has written prose and fiction and all kinds of stuff. She's speaking out of her own experience, I do believe. Not so much that she's had sexual experiences with women, but that she understands the importance of it
Hmm.
and the ability to embrace it. My best friend in the world is a straight woman. But she is not afraid to be with me in public, to go out to have a dinner, to go to a movie together, to live in my home.
Hmm.
This idea that we can be together because we're women.
Yeah.
And for me, that's so very, very, very important. I get shunned a lot
Mm.
because there's still this stigmatization that happens, right? And I wear this tie not because I'm trying to be a man, but because I'm saying a man doesn't have, any dips on it. It's
Come on
fashion,
now.
right? I
And
can
it
wear, I
look
can
good.
wear what I
And,
want to
and,
wear.
and it looked good
And
on
it
you.
look good.
But the point being, right, I'm all about the disruption because
Mm.
so many times just because I was
Yeah.
a lawyer,
Mm.
people won't call you Mr. Smallwood. They want to do that because the implication is that this is a man's job.
Hmm.
This is only what men do.
Yeah.
And I'm here to tell you, I'm soft in all the right places at all the right times. I am a woman. But the bottom line is I can do the work. And my gender is not a hindrance. It's a help.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Woo! Well, we like
Ah,
to. I like to ask all our guests this one final question because Dr. Smallwood, you're doing a whole lot of work, and we do know that the work of racial justice in of itself is a lot because
Yeah.
folks will wear you out. They
Mm,
will wear you out,
mm,
wear you completely out. But what do you do to take care of yourself?
mm. I am so thankful to you all. You have given such wonderful questions. And for me, self care is such an important part of the dialogue, right? You don't enter the discourse, you don't get into the dialectics without having first dealt with yourself.
Mm,
For me, it was going to get my nails done, girl.
girl.
And before the pandemic hit, I would go a few days all the time to the water. I like to go to beaches,
mhm.
love to take a book and just read in the breeze and the sunlight. But since the pandemic, I've done more of the couch sitting. I'm
Mhm.
just gonna admit it.
Same.
But let
Same.
me tell you, now you asked the question. I hope I don't mess the whole thing up by telling you the
Just
truth.
come on here.
Same.
But it ain't nothing like just a couple of little swigs
Yeah.
of my favorite cognac.
Hmm.
Yeah,
On the
around
Yeah.
couch.
uh a
Yeah.
nice fireplace
Hmm.
and a
Hmm.
cozy chair.
Hmm.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I take care
Indeed.
of myself.
Okay. Yes.
And that is good.
Woo,
That is good
it's
because we need to
so
see this
good.
work.
Yes.
Ain't nothing like it. I
Nothing
so
like
agree with you on that one.
Thank
I
you.
hope I didn't make you blush, sis.
Oh,
No, let me
oh,
tell you
yeah.
something, because what you can't see is my bottle of Stella Rosa peach right on the side here that I just finished this evening.
I got
So
you.
yeah.
Mhm.
With, I mean, I'm just gonna be honest. People say because I love wine, I be like, Jesus drank a lot of wine, and that was my little Jesus.
Okay. Yes.
So
Speak the
there you
truth.
have it.
Just saying.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you.
Teresa. This was phenomenal.
Mhm.
You are a phenomenal woman,
Thank you.
and you have blessed us. And I know that you have blessed and enlightened and maybe even set free some of the people who are on this uh, in this room tonight. And so
Yeah,
I
Thank you.
thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
We
Thank
will.
you so much.
Thank you for your yes, and thank you for the way you show up.
Yes.
And thank you both for your work. I
Thank
so
you.
appreciate you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Mhm.
Well, all right, y'all. We do want to let
Whew.
y'all know we're gonna be back again next week for our third installment of Womanist Wednesday. And next week we have Reverend Dr. Nichelle Guidry, who will be our Womanist of the Week. And she is, I know she's over the Spelman Chapel. I can't remember her real title. I'm gonna have it all together
She's
next
the
week right
dean.
now.
She's the dean of the chapel. She's the
That's it,
dean.
Dina. I was like, it's Spelman
Yes.
Chapel, I know, but she's also, I know she has a PhD in homiletics, but we're going to have a good
Yes.
talk
And
with
she's
her
an
next week. So
author.
join
Yes.
us next week at 7 p.m. Also want to invite you, because maybe you just stopped by because we got Dr. Smallwood, and you
Mm-hmm.
haven't been to the gathering. So I want to invite you to join us on Saturday for a worship. Our worship service is Saturday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, 1 hour worship here on Facebook Live or on YouTube. I also want to remind our gatherers and anybody else who's interested, we will be having our financial classes this week on, and this week is the basics of investing. So if you are interested in joining that class, if you go to our website, thegatheringexperience.com, on the calendar page, there is a place where you could register for the Zoom, and we invite anyone who's interested. It'll be 10 o'clock a.m. on Saturday. We are so grateful you all joined us.
All right. I think that's it.
Let him say bye to Dr. Smallwood.
Ah, there we go. There we go. All right. Thank y'all. We'll see you next time.
Good night.